The phone rang before the kettle boiled, a bright, official sound that cut through the smell of coffee and lemon cleaner. Morning light lay in thin bars across the folded flag on my mantel, creased sharp as orders, dust floating like quiet. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered. "Mrs. Turner?" a woman asked, voice steady, paper underneath steady. "Jenna Foster, Cumberland County Child Services. I'm calling about a dependent connected to your late husband, Staff Sergeant Luke Turner." My breath stalled in the space between her words and my kitchen's hum. The base commissary apron I'd forgotten to take off last night felt tight across my ribs. I glanced at the flag because I always did when the world needed an anchor. "Connected how?" I managed. "There's a boy," she said. Noah Ruiz, 8. His mother, Maria Ruiz, just passed. Documentation indicates Luke Turner is his father. The kettle clicked off. Steam curled and vanished. I set it back on the stove because my hands needed something to do that wasn't shaking. Luke's son? The word sounded both new and already in the house. Somewhere outside, a truck downshifted. The window rattled once and held. "Yes, ma'am," Jenna said, tone careful, kind. "I know this is a shock. Ms. Ruiz requested we contact you if anything happened to her. There's a letter addressed to you. Noah has no other family." I looked at the small things. A chipped mug, the commissary badge clipped to my sweater, the neat stack of bills in the tray under the key hook. 10 years of routine flexed like an old muscle. I had survived deployment notices, casualty assistance briefings, and the echo of my own footsteps in a house built for two. I knew how to keep time when clocks felt rude. "Where is he?" I asked. "At St. Agnes with a temporary foster," she said. Paper shuffled on her end. I heard it like wind turning pages. "He's quiet, artistic. We were hoping you would meet him." My eyes found the binder on the shelf under the flag, the one where I keep everything that proves a life lived correctly. Mortgage, insurance, Luke's service records. A thin film of lemon oil shone on its cover. The house smelled like Thursday chores and a life I could inventory. I pressed my palm to the counter until the cool laminate convinced me I was still standing where my feet were. "I'll come," I said. When I set the phone down, it rattled against the butcher block, small as a salute. I poured water I wouldn't drink, then poured it back. The morning had a new gravity. I touched the crease of Luke's flag with 2 fingers. Tap, tap, the way he used to knock on the door when he came home late. "It's me." The sound inside my chest answered back, surprised and certain. I reached for my keys and slid his dog tag into my pocket out of reflex. It knocked against my own in a quiet, familiar way. On the way out, I looked at the spare room, the one I never used, the one I'd filled with boxes of uniforms and a sewing machine, and the kind of silence that keeps a respectful distance. A beam of sun cut across the carpet. Dust hung like a congregation waiting to stand. I locked the door, checked it once, and stepped into air that smelled like cold pine and hot asphalt. My car started on the second turn, as always. As I pulled away, the flag in the window across the street stirred against glass and then lay still, like it knew it was being watched. There was a boy with my husband's last name, and a sketchbook I hadn't seen yet. I drove toward him, hands at 10 and 2, knuckles white, heart steadying to an old cadence. Grief had a schedule at my house. I kept it like reveille. Morning started with coffee and the flag. I dusted the triangular case with 2 slow passes, then set my binder on the kitchen table and paid 1 bill, any bill, just to prove the day could be moved by effort. Paper behaved when nothing else did. I learned the sound my house made when it was honest. HVAC hum, fridge click, wind pushing pine against the siding. I learned which floorboard near the hallway squeaked and left it that way so I'd hear myself pass. For 10 years, I lived by lists. Laundry Thursdays, commissary shifts in the frozen aisle where breath turned visible, oil changes every 5,000 miles. Customers asked where the coffee filters were. I pointed with a whole hand and said, "Aisle 3, halfway down." Like certainty was a product we stocked. I wore Luke's dog tag on a chain with mine. They clinked once when I bent to lift bulk rice. Some days the sound was a blessing. Some days it was metal saying, "Still here when I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it." Family thinned over time. Phone calls turned into holidays, then into texts that said, thinking of you without asking how I slept. My sister Rachel preferred advice to help. You should sell the house, she'd say, voice bright over the line. Downsize. Start over. As if grief were a sofa you could rehome with a post and a firm price. Routine tucked me in. Saturdays I walked the base track before sunrise. Rubber smell, shoes slapping, breaths counted in fours. Sundays I made pancakes for no one, flipping them at the exact bubble count Luke used to tease me for. I ate 2 and wrapped the rest for the freezer because waste made me feel disloyal. I kept Luke present in practical ways. The garage held his tool chest and a box of letters I never reread. The spare room held uniforms sealed in plastic and a sewing machine I swore I'd learned to use. The house never felt haunted. It felt at attention, like it was waiting for me to give a new order I didn't know how to write. I worked extra shifts. Quiet was cheaper than company. At the commissary, the freezer's white roar covered thoughts that didn't need airing. I refaced canned beans until the labels made a rank. I liked the click of a price gun. Numbers landed and stayed where you put them. Once a month, I drove to the cemetery with 2 paper cups of coffee. One for me, one to steam the air and make a place for conversation. You'd hate my haircut, I'd tell the granite. But the gutters are cleared. I tapped the flag case at home twice on those days, a small Morse code in a language that belonged to us. Neighbors learned my silences. Mr. Howell, from across the street, mowed to the property line and stopped. The kids next door asked permission to chalk the sidewalk. I kept extra sticks by the door and said yes without a speech. On windy days, I took laundry in early because shirts on a line made me miss movement. I built the binder after the casualty officer left. Insurance, mortgage, VA letters, everything hole-punched and tabbed. I added a section titled Future and left it blank like a dare. When I felt brave, I penciled in small things. Learned to hem pants, repaint the porch, plant tomatoes. I crossed out travel because I couldn't imagine sleeping anywhere my feet didn't know the way to the bathroom in the dark. Luke lived in the house like clean air. His laugh was gone. His standards stayed. I kept the counters empty, the knives sharp, the mail sorted. I replaced the porch light myself and felt the old pride rise like a tide I couldn't ride yet. Rachel visited once a year with a candle that smelled like vanilla arguments. You're stuck, she'd say, peering at the spare room like a realtor. You deserve more than this town and a flag. Oh. She meant well the way wind means well. It moves what it can, not always what should. I let my world be small on purpose. Some afternoons I sat with the radio off and listed the things I didn't have to endure anymore. Late night knocks, deployment countdowns, pity casseroles. Then I listed the things I missed and stopped when the pen felt heavier than my hand. When the call came about Noah, there was enough me left to answer. Enough order to hold the sudden. Enough quiet to hear a new note. That morning before the phone rang, I had written tomatoes under future and drawn a small square where a seedling might go. The page waited. The house waited. The flag waited too, in its case, crease catching light like a promise I hadn't made yet. On the drive to St. Agnes, I tried to imagine the face of a boy who belonged to my husband, and a history I didn't know. I tried to imagine a sketchbook on a kitchen table that had known only bills and pancakes. The AC smelled like dust, the dash like sun-warmed plastic. My hand stayed at 10 and 2 because habit held when imagination threatened to tip me. I parked under a crooked pine. The hospice lobby whispered disinfectant and old paperbacks. A volunteer in scrubs offered water I forgot to drink. I signed my name on a clipboard, ballpoint snagging slightly on a nick in the form's cardboard, and the loop of the Y looked steady. Jenna met me with a folder. The county's own binder, tabs neat, no perfumes. He likes to draw, she said, as if we were discussing whether I'd prefer. He'll show you if you don't ask. I took a breath that reached the bottom of my lungs and let it out without apology. 10 years alone had taught me how to stand. I was about to learn how to kneel to a child's eye level and mean it. Hospice hallways breathed disinfectant and orange peel. Sunlight fell in tidy squares across the tile. Jenna walked beside me with a county folder tucked under her arm like it had a pulse. At the end of the corridor, a door stood open on a room with a small couch, 2 plastic chairs, and a table scattered with crayons worn down to honest nubs. A boy sat cross-legged on the carpet, head bent, tongue at the corner of his mouth the way kids concentrate. Brown hair too long for school pictures. Sneakers clean in the way of children who've learned to clean themselves. His sketchbook lay open, a graphite jet unfurling from the page. Not a toy airplane. Angles right, lift lines true. Someone had shown him. Noah, Jenna said soft. This is Mrs. Turner. Emily. He didn't look up at first. He added a tiny curl to the wingtip, then blew the dust and turned the book a quarter inch. When his eyes lifted, they were Luke's gray, lighter at the edges, cautious in the middle. Hi, I said, hands in plain sight. I like your jet. He closed the sketchbook halfway, protective without hiding. It's a C-17, he said, testing. I was about to say C-17, but I didn't want to be wrong, I said, which was true and also a small invitation. Your lines are clean. The corner of his mouth twitched, not exactly a smile. I use a ruler sometimes. I use a binder, I said. It helps me keep life in lines. He looked at Jenna. Is she joking? Then back at me. Why do you have a binder? So I don't lose things that matter, I said. Like bills and names and a letter I think I'm supposed to read today. Jenna nodded once, caught the cue, and set a manila envelope on the table. Emily Turner. In a hand I didn't know yet. The paper made a dry whisper sound. I didn't reach for it. Your mom wrote that, Jenna told Noah. For Emily. He studied the seal like it could tell him how it would feel. She says letters are like bridges, he murmured. They are, I said. You walk across them when you're ready. He slid the sketchbook fully closed now and put his palm on top. Claim staked. Do you like pancakes? He asked, sudden, like a pop quiz from another room. Yes, I said. Sundays, 2 for breakfast, 2 for later. Blueberries? He pressed. When I'm brave, I said. They bleed in the batter. He considered that. I draw before church, he said. I don't like church much. He glanced at Jenna, then down. Don't tell. I like true things, I said. You can say them to me. He nodded like he was filing the sentence. The room's monitor beeped a polite rhythm through the wall. Someone laughed in a far hallway. A cart's wheels squeaked. Life made ordinary sounds where endings live. Jenna crouched to his level. Noah, would you like to meet Emily again tomorrow? We can sit in the garden, or... She looked at me. There's someone who asked to see you, Emily. Maria. She's resting, but she has time. Is she scared? Noah asked, not looking up. Brave, Jenna said. Tired. He turned a pencil in his fingers until the paint caught light. She told me there's a Marine who did the right thing, he said. She told me his name. I already knew it. The flag on my mantle leaped into my chest and sat there. I kept my voice the way I keep knives, sharp, careful. Luke tried to do the right thing as often as he could, I said. Sometimes we all miss, but he tried. Noah's shoulders dipped, relief or grief or both. She said he would have wanted me to draw jets. I think he would have wanted you to draw anything, I said. Jets, trees, dinosaurs, pancakes. That pulled the ghost of a laugh from him, quick, shy. Jenna stood and smoothed the folder's edge. I can give you a few minutes, she said quietly, and stepped into the hall. We sat in a small silence that felt like a beginning rather than a drift. I took the envelope at last and turned it over once, twice. The flap edge pressed a new line into my palm. Noah watched my hand. You can open it, he said, like permission. I will, I said. But first, I wanted you to know I came because your name matters to me. I pointed at the sketchbook. And if you ever want to show me those pages, I'll look until you tell me to stop. He nodded, solemn. Okay. Mini turn, when he scooted the sketchbook an inch toward me and then back, muscle memory of trust figuring itself out. Tomorrow, he said. Garden. Tomorrow, I agreed. I stood. He stood because I did. I reached out halfway. He didn't move. I let my hand fall. We gave each other the dignity of not forcing the next step. At the doorway, Jenna met me with eyes that knew what words weigh. Maria can see you now, she said. She asked that Noah rest. I looked down at the envelope. then at the boy with Luke's eyes and a C-17 lifted off paper that hadn't asked to carry so much. "I'll be right back," I told him. He tapped the sketchbook twice with 2 fingers, his own private permission to proceed. I slid the letter into my bag next to my keys and the dog tags and followed Jenna down the hall that smelled like oranges and endings. The flag in my mind stayed where it always does, sharp and waiting. The garden was tomorrow. Today I said yes. Maria's room carried a faint peppermint over antiseptic, the kind of clean that tries to make a body forget it's tired. A monitor ticked a modest rhythm. She was smaller than the pictures in Jenna's folder. Cheekbones sharpened, hair wrapped in a soft scarf, eyes bright with that particular courage you only see at the edges of a life. "Emily Turner," she said, voice a dry leaf that still knew how to speak. "I hoped you'd come." Her hands worked at the blanket until they found stillness. A sealed envelope lay on the tray table, my name printed in careful script. "I'm here," I said. I set my bag down where metal wouldn't clink too loud and took the chair, knees angled toward her as if posture could promise gentleness. She glanced toward the window where late sun strobed through blinds. "He was good," she said without preface. "You're Luke. Better than the versions people make when they're lonely." I let air in slow. The peppermint lifted as if to help. "You knew him," I said, not a question. "Before he married you?" She blinked hard. "No. After. When my world was messy." A quiver at the corner of her mouth. Not quite regret. Something more human. "We were both trying to prove we weren't afraid. He was honest about you. I told him I didn't need saving." She dragged a breath. "We were wrong about many things." I watched her hands, the tendons moving like fine string. "Did he know about Noah?" Her eyes filmed. "Not then. I tried to tell him when the tests came back. He was already gone. Orders, dessert, decisions." She shifted, a wince she didn't apologize for. "I wrote and rewrote 100 scraps. Threw away 99. Then the diagnosis came. I thought a scandal would take your house apart. A scandal would. And I'd rather hold my own shame than hand you both a wrecking ball." I set my palm on the bed rail. Cool metal, honest boundary. "You weren't a scandal," I said. "You were a person." Mini turn. She laughed once, surprised, then coughed, the monitor answering with a patient chirp. "That's generous," she said, but her shoulders lowered like something set down. "He sent money later through a friend, no names. He wasn't a coward. He was compartmentalized." She smiled at the word like it had saved and cost her. "He drew airplanes with Noah in the cafe once. Just shapes, just lines. Said, 'You'll be good at this,' and left before the waitress could make it a story." Peppermint lingered. The blinds cast ladder lines across the floor. Light moved one rung in the time it took us to remember not to hurry. "I kept his child secret," she said. "Not because I wanted to punish you, but because I didn't know how to be decent and brave at the same time. When the chemo failed, decency and bravery finally shook hands." She touched the envelope with 2 fingers. "I wrote you how I failed and where I tried. I wrote Noah the pieces that matter. If you can..." She pressed the sheet closer to me. "If you can be the person who tells him his father stood up more often than he fell, then you'll have told the truth." "I can," I said. The room heard me, so did I. She studied my face like a photograph she meant to keep. "Does the flag make you angry?" she asked. "I've seen them on mantles. They look like folded sentences." "Sometimes," I said. "Mostly it looks like a paused breath." I lifted my eyes. "It's waiting for the next chapter." She closed hers at that, a small piece. "Good," she whispered. "Write it with pancakes." We sat with the hum and the peppermint and the gentle tyranny of monitors. When she opened her eyes again, she pointed at the window. "He draws the sky like it's heavy," she said. "Teach him it isn't." "I will," I said. I slid the letter into my bag next to the dog tags. Metal kissed paper, something old acknowledging something new. Before I left, she caught my wrist, light as moth wings. "I was afraid of being the villain in your stories," she said. "I'm okay with being the hinge." "You're the bridge," I said, borrowing her word. We'll walk across you, kindly. In the hall, bleach reasserted itself. A cart squeaked. Life resumed its practical gait. I found Jenna by the nurse's station. Garden tomorrow, I said, and paperwork after. She nodded, pen ready. I'll bring the forms. You bring whatever you bring. Pancakes, I said, and she smiled like that was the right answer. The hospice garden smelled like rosemary and warm soil, bees stitched quiet between lavender stems. Noah sat on the low wall, sketchbook braced on his knees, tongue at the corner of his mouth again. He had drawn a folded flag without knowing its angles from life, his lines crisp, his shading soft. Triangles are easy, he said without looking up. But the stars are hard. They are, I said, taking the spot beside him, the stone heat pressing through denim. They get easier when you don't try to count them. He squinted, then darkened one corner with firm strokes. The flag is sad, he concluded, pencil pausing. It's waiting, I said. Like a book on the part where you have to turn the page. He turned the sketchbook toward me an inch, then back. I don't like sad books. Me neither, I said. I like boring ones with grocery lists and Saturday chores and blueberry pancakes that ruin the batter. He glanced sideways. You said blueberries when you're brave. I'm brave on Sundays, I said. It's a rule. He considered, then drew a single blueberry on the corner of the page. Tiny circle, shade, dot of shine. Okay, he said, almost to himself. Mini turn. He pulled something from his hoodie pocket. A scrap of paper, rip edge uneven. A quick pencil jet, small, precise. He held it out. You can have this, he said like a test. Thank you, I said, and didn't tuck it away. I held it where he could see I kept it visible. Paper warmed in my hand. Jenna joined us at a respectful drift, the county folder under her arm like a quiet promise. Noah, Mrs. Turner is thinking about having you over. Maybe for pancakes. He looked at me, then at the rosemary, then back. Do you have a spare room? I do, I said. It has boxes and a sewing machine and a window that gets bossy at 5 p.m. Can I put my sketchbook on the desk? You can put your sketchbook anywhere you want, except the stove, I said. I have rules about stoves. He nodded, accepting the existence of civilized borders. Do you have Legos? No, I said, but I have a binder. He huffed something like a laugh. That's not a toy. It is in my house, I said. You can help me label things wrong on purpose. He thought about that, then set his pencil down as if closing one chapter with a neat line. Okay, he said. Pancakes tomorrow? Tomorrow, I said again, and meant a truth larger than food. We walked the perimeter of the garden so his legs could do what his eyes had done. He told me sunflowers were too obvious to draw and preferred thistles because they looked like they fought to be interesting. I told him the thistles reminded me of Marines I'd known. He smirked like he appreciated the joke without awarding it points. Jenna handed me a slim packet that smelled faintly of paper and intent. Preliminary placement, she said. Home study. Background already done. Her eyes were soft and strict. It's work, not theater. I like that, I said, sliding the packet into my tote above Maria's letter. The dog tags knocked softly, Luke in metal punctuation. Noah kicked a pebble and watched it skitter. Will you make me go to church? I'll make you go to schoolers, I said. Church is a maybe. Pancakes are a yes. Okay, he said, the words small as a saddle and twice as useful. That evening, the house smelled like lemon oil, and a room that hadn't been used in a decade opening its lungs. I cracked the spare room door. Hinges gave a polite complaint. The window threw a rectangle of gold onto carpet. I moved boxes to the garage one by one, the uniforms, the sewing machine I'd never plugged in, the folded absence that room had been. Dust rose, my throat caught. The hum of the AC steadied me. On the desk, I set a clean pad, a dull pencil, and the scrap jet he'd given me. The corner curled in the heat and then settled. Maria's letter waited on the kitchen table. I opened it with a butter knife because I didn't own a proper opener, and some tools are allowed to learn new jobs. Her handwriting leaned right. Her sentences did not ask for pity. Emily, I made small, brave choices too late. This is me making a big one just in time. Noah is not a mistake. He is an opportunity for all of us to be better than our math. I kept quiet because I feared the world would call me names. If you can please forgive the quiet, tell him his father stood for something that still belongs to him. Honor and a silly laugh and the ability to show up. If you can give him a home, do it with pancakes and rules. And if you cannot, please be the person who picks the person who can. Love is not a triangle. It is a bridge. Maria. I folded the letter slow, pressed the crease with my thumb, and tucked it into my binder under a new tab I labeled Noah. The word looked small and right. Mini turn. My phone buzzed on the counter, Rachel's name bright and insistent. Heard a rumor you're adopting a love child, the text read, sharp with that peculiar blend of concern and spectacle. Don't be stupid, Em. I took a photograph of the screen from my folder and did not reply. Then I laid Maria's letter on top as if truth could wait gossip. It can. I washed 2 plates because habits grow in pairs. I put blueberries on the counter where I couldn't forget them in the morning, even if they turned the batter purple. I set Luke's dog tag beside mine on the mantle and tapped the flag case. Tap? Tap. It's me, I said into the room. The house listened the way good houses do when you finally stop whispering. I called Jenna. Pancakes at 8, I said. We'll start the home study after. Copy, she said, and I smiled at a word that has never lied to me. Before bed, I walked the perimeter, as if grief were a fence I still had to respect. Front latch, backslider, spare room door now open. The house made its honest noises. HVAC hum, fridge click, a distant dog deciding to give up on heroics. I slept with the binder on the chair, Maria's letter on top, the scrap jet on the desk in a room that had remembered how to be used. When morning came, it smelled like batter and coffee. I stood over a skillet until the blueberries bled and smiled because that was the point. The flag caught sun. The crease didn't look like a scar so much as a fold in a map. Turn here. I flipped the first pancake and knew love hadn't been the mistake. It was the mission. The county courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. Fluorescence hummed. A flag in the corner hung steady, crease like a held breath. I set my binder on the table. Tabs squared, Maria's letter riding top, Noah's scrapjet tucked in the inside pocket. Across the aisle, Rachel sat with a neat folder and a face for church. David Ruiz lounged 2 rows back, tie loose, eyes busy with calculation. Jenna squeezed my shoulder once. Evidence, not theater, she murmured. Copy, I said. The judge, clean bench, patient eyes, looked down over reading glasses. Case. Guardianship of Noah Ruiz. Appearances? Emily Turner, I said. Petitioner. Rachel Morgan, my sister said, voice bright. Concerned family. David Ruiz, he added, teeth showing. Blood uncle. The judge tapped his pen, a simple metronome. Proceed, Miss Foster. Jenna stood. Your Honor, Child Services initiated placement after Miss Ruiz's death. Preliminary home study, stable employment, safe residence, support network. Petitioner has provided continuous care since placement. Rachel popped up like a toast. Gossip says she's unstable. Widow grief. Impulse. The judge didn't look at her. We'll hear evidence. I opened the binder. Paper gave a soft exhale. First tab, home. I slid photos under the doc cam. Spare room with desk and clean pad, blueberries on the counter, the pancake skillet mid-flip. The monitor's glow put light on the page. Safe room prepared, I said. Routines in place. Rachel's smile sharpened. Breakfast isn't custody. No, I said. It's love made repeatable. Second tab, school health, enrollment forms, doctor appointment confirmations, immunization records, names, times, check marks. Jenna nodded like a metronome approving tempo. David stood, voice oily. I can provide opportunities. Boys need men. Employment? The judge asked. Between ventures, Mike, he said. Arrests? The judge asked. David's jaw twitched. Old misunderstandings. Jenna lifted a page, the county printout with dates and dispositions. The room read along. Third tab, Maria. I slid her letter forward, tremor under control. Permission and truth, I said. Her words, not mine. The judge read in a silence that did what silence should. He set it down softly. Rachel leaned toward her mic. Anonymous reports describe chaos at Emily's home. Anonymous? The judge asked. Rachel stared at her folder. People talk. Evidence speaks, he said. Minnie turned. David produced a glossy photo. Me at the Marine League Hall. Noah holding a small flag, faces solemn. He slapped it on the rail like a trump. Parading him, he said. Public spectacle. I touched Noah's scrapjet in my pocket and let the paper calm my hand. Ceremony, I said. Legacy braided with care. I slid the program under the dock cam. Marine League tribute. Flag presentation to Noah Ruiz Turner. Jenna's signature verifying consent. The judge's mouth softened. Fourth tab, Noah. Sketches in plastic sleeves, C-17s, thistles, a folded flag-shaded patient. I placed the first one on the glass. His lines are clean, I said. He needs a table and a person who notices. Rachel pounced. That doesn't make you a mother. It makes me responsible, I said, and present. She frowned, then pulled her last card. She's trying to replace Luke. 8 words sharpened to hurt. I met her eyes. I'm expanding him. The judge looked at Jenna. Caseworker recommendation? Permanent guardianship to Ms. Turner, Jenna said. She meets every metric. She exceeds the ones that matter. David tried swagger again. Blood matters. The judge turned a page. So do arrests. He lifted his pen and addressed me. Ms. Turner, anything further? I stood, hands flat on the binder so the wood could steady me. The flag in the corner held its crease. The room smelled like wax and an afternoon deciding who will carry whom. People said he was a mistake, I said, voice level. They were wrong. Love was the mission. Rachel rolled her eyes. David smirked. The judge didn't move. He closed the file, then opened it again and signed without fussy flourish. Guardianship granted, he said. Permanent. He looked at Rachel. Anonymous sabotage is not advocacy. He looked at David. Monetizing grief is disqualifying. Then back to me. Ms. Turner, raise him boring. Pancakes, school, sketchbooks. Yes, Your Honor, I said. He handed the order down, paper warm from his hand. Jenna's chin trembled once. She corrected it with a breath. Minnie turned. The back row stood first. 2 Marine veterans in jackets with patches, hands at their sides. Then the bailiff. Then 3 strangers. Stand moved up the benches, quiet and correct. No applause. Alignment in a room built for it. The flag didn't move. It didn't need to. Rachel sat very still. Her throat worked. She whispered, I'm sorry, like a person trying on truth. I nodded once. Receipt acknowledged, invoice pending. David left fast, chair scraping, confidence cooling in the doorway air. Outside, the steps were warm under the midday sun. The air smelled like cut grass and car brakes. Jenna handed me a copy of the order. The embossing caught light. He's waiting at school, she said. Dismissal at 2. I slid the order into the binder behind Maria's letter. Paper against paper, past and present agreeing. The scrapjet lived in the inside pocket where my palm could find it without looking. I drove to the school with both tags on the chain. In the pickup line, minivans idled, a whistle blew, kids spilled like marbles. Noah walked out with his backpack too big and his sketchbook held like a passport. He saw my face, then the binder on the passenger seat, then the flag sticker on the back window. He didn't run. He didn't test. He just nodded like a pilot cleared to land. How'd it go? He asked. Correctly, I said. Boring and final. He climbed in, buckled without being asked, and set the sketchbook on his knees. Blueberries? He asked. Bleeding batter, I said. He smiled. Quick, small. Okay. We drove home on roads that finally looked like mine again. The house smelled like morning pancakes waiting to be promised. I set the order on the mantel next to the flag and tapped the case twice. Tap, tap. The crease caught light like a page turning. Where do I put my pencils? Noah asked from the doorway. Anywhere but the stove, I said. He laughed once. Luke's echo, Noah's sound. He carried his sketchbook down the hall to the spare room that had breathed overnight and become a place. I stood in the kitchen and washed 2 plates because habits grow in pairs. Over the sink, the window framed a square of sky the exact size of a new life. I dried my hands, opened the binder to Noah, and slipped the court order in behind Maria's letter. The page cooled my palm. The mission had changed. The discipline hadn't. Love was the mission. And now, so was breakfast. The order sat warm under the mantel light, embossing catching a thin gold line. The house smelled like dish soap and old maple syrup. Noah rinsed his plate the way I taught him. Sleeves pushed up, tongue peeking at the corner of his mouth for the stubborn blueberry stain. The folded flag washed from its case. Crease no longer a wound so much as a hinge. Homework first, art second, I said, sliding the Noah-tabbed section of my binder shut. Paper made that soft exhale I've come to trust. He nodded, already unzipping the backpack. Math, then drawing, he recited. He set his sketchbook on the table like a passport. Edges squared, graphite smudge on his thumb, a small badge. Pencil sound ticked across paper. The fridge answered with its quiet click. Mini turn. My phone buzzed. Rachel. I let it vibrate twice before I answered on speaker with Noah in the room. I'm sorry, she said, voice stripped of perfume. I sent the report. I thought it would force you to slow down. You made me say everything out loud, I said, keeping the words even. That helped. Don't do it again. I wiped a circle of water under Noah's cup. If you can be kind, you can be here. I can try, she said, and for once the sentence didn't ask for applause. Sunday pancakes? Bring blueberries, I said. No speeches. We hung up. Noah didn't look up from his sums. Aunt Rachel coming? Maybe, I said. She's learning our rules. He drew a tiny blueberry in the margin of his math sheet and didn't comment. Jenna swung by after dinner, county folder tucked under her arm like a good habit. The living room smelled faintly of laundry and pencil shavings. She sat on the edge of the chair and watched Noah shade a wing clean. Guardianship order delivered to all parties, she said. School updated. Benefits transferred. You're official in every way that matters. Copy, I said. The word always loosened my shoulders. She set a second envelope on the table, crisp and too formal. Marine League wants to include Noah at Saturday's ceremony. She lowered her voice. Flag and medal presentation. Noah's pencil paused. He didn't look at us. He darkened the leading edge of the wing one shade deeper. Do I have to cry? You have to stand, I said. You get to feel however you feel. He nodded. Okay. The next morning smelled like rain on hot pavement. Tires hissed past the curb. I ironed the lone dress I keep for dignified rooms and pressed a collared shirt for an 8-year-old who prefers soft hoodies. He slid his arms in without protest, cheeks clean, hair refusing to obey the comb for longer than a minute. He tucked his sketchbook under the shirt like armor. Mini turn. David texted a final flail. Appeal coming. You'll regret this. Attorney Foster's reply arrived faster. A screenshot of the stamped denial and the words filed, dismissed. I put the paper in noise and moved a pancake to Noah's plate. He added syrup with care, as if honoring gravity were part of the ritual. We drove to school with the windows cracked. The car smelled like crayon and rain. At the curb, a teacher's aide bent to Noah's eye level and tapped the binder I'd left on the passenger seat. He likes lines, I explained. We'll keep them straight, she said and meant it. Afternoons found their rhythm, homework, snack, art. I put a basket by the door for found acorns and pocket rocks because collections deserve dignity. The spare room began to smell like pencil cedar and boy. His drawings marched across the wall on blue painter's tape. Flags, jets, a thistle muscling through a crack. The dog tags on the mantel clinked once when I dusted. The sound no longer took me apart. Rachel arrived Sunday with a paper sack of blueberries and no commentary. The kitchen held its breath and then resumed. Noah stirred batter with a wooden spoon, careful, focused. Blueberries bleed, he announced to no one. They do, Rachel said soft. That's the point. We ate in the quiet people make, when they are building something they don't want to break. After she washed plates without a lesson and left with a hug that didn't ask for terms. Progress has manners. The Marine League Hall smelled like polished wood and coffee that had sat too long. Flags ringed the stage, the PA whispered its own hum. Noah squeezed my fingers once and then let go. He wore the collared shirt again because some patterns mean we respect rooms. Veterans in jackets that kept their stories quiet took seats. Hands folded. The program paper rasped when I adjusted it in my lap. A Marine in dress blues stepped to the mic. "Today we honor Staff Sergeant Luke Turner," he said, voice square and kind, "and we recognize his son Noah for the legacy he carries." Noah stood when I did. We walked to the center together, his sneakers soft, my heels honest on varnish. The folded flag came forward on white gloves, creases sharp as orders, and the medal lay on velvet, ribbon deep blue. "You're not a mistake," I whispered behind my teeth. "You're the mission." He didn't answer, but his chin lifted, 1 degree, measured. When the flag touched his hands, he looked down at the triangle like a problem he intended to solve. The medal's metal was cool, he didn't flinch. The hall settled into good silence. Mini turn. Someone in the back row rose, an old sergeant with a cane, then another, then the whole room, stand moving clean as cadence. No applause, just alignment. The PA hum felt like a tide. After, in the lobby that smelled like coffee and rain on wool, a woman I'd never met pressed a small ribbon into Noah's palm. First place from a kid's art show he'd entered without telling me. "For your thistle," she said. "It fought to be interesting." He glanced up at me, permission asked and granted in one look. He pinned it to the inside of his sketchbook cover and patted it twice. His version of tap-tap, the permission to proceed. At home, the house exhaled us back onto its clean lines. I slid the metal case onto the mantel beside the flag and tucked the court order behind Maria's letter and Noah so the pages would lean on each other. Noah stood in the spare room doorway and considered his wall like a curator. He lifted the thistle and moved it an inch to the left. "Better," he said. We made tea and sat on the stoop because the air smelled like cut grass and evening. Neighbors waved without staring. Rachel texted a photo of a mixing bowl with a single blueberry in the center. "Pancakes next Sunday?" I sent back copy and a picture of Noah's ribbon on the sketchbook. The porch light clicked on when the sun finally gave up. I tapped the flag case. Tap, tap, and felt the hinge steady in my fingers. Noah leaned his head on my shoulder for the first time. It felt like a rank I hadn't known I wanted. "Tomorrow," he said, sleepy. "Breakfast," I said. "Waffles," he tested. "Mission creep," I said. Approved. We went inside. The door answered the lock with a soft click I can hear across a lifetime. The binder lived on the shelf where it belongs. The flag held the crease it chose. The house made its honest noises. And the sketchbook waited open on the desk, pencil ready, like a runway under a sky that had finally remembered how to be light. If you believe boundaries and documents are the strongest revenge, subscribe for real stories about freedom, dignity, and surviving family betrayal.